interactive session 2 on advancing policy and enabling environment to promote women economic empowerment in Asia Pacific region. In the next 40 to 45 minutes, we will hear some insights from our distinguished speakers who are leaders from both public and private sector about the initiative on gender inclusive and sustainable economic development through private sector engagement and advocacy. But before we go into our discussion, perhaps we could do a little bit of temperature check and hear some general view and impression from our audience in this room. We have a couple of Mentimeters questions for participants to just kick things started before we go into the discussion to see some background information and knowledge on our side. So I would like to start with the first questions. So if you can take off your handphones or the other equipments or smartphones, and you can scan using this, or you can either go to menti.com and then use the code 95764790, or you can just simply scan the code and you'll get in there. There's a few questions just to get us started after lunch and a little bit afternoon session will get us a little sleepy. So maybe a little bit of interaction here would be helpful. Dom, could I have the flash? Yes, thank you. So first question, do you know how many % of women are in C-suites, in C-level role in your country? Yes, no, not sure. Let's see what's come out. Yeah, we have quite a few coming up. We have at the moment, no and not sure and yes are neck to neck. Any other votes before I share some answer overall? Okay. A few more seconds. Not sure is taking the lead, and no, even more. Okay, so that's give us a little bit of a pause just to see, you know, actually globally women make up only 5% of the CEO according to the World Economic Forum, and this is clearly as a statistic here is pretty unsure, right? Even our participants are uncertain. Perhaps we can maybe move to the second questions. Does your company have a policy on safe and inclusive workplace for women? Yes, no, not sure. Oh, okay. It's back. Okay, so we have a lot of yes here, which is good news. We know that sexual harassment and violence in the workplace have a high cost for women in terms of the loss of earning, the missed promotions, social well-being, economic income, and look at the greater negative impact on the companies in terms of safe space, teamwork, corporate culture that provides an enabling environment for diversity and creativity that is also key for productivity, innovation, and growth. And here, as you can see, employers and organizations like yourself are playing a key role in addressing the issues of physical, mental health, safety, and well-being of employees. And that directly correlate with principle number 3 of Women Empowerment Principle. Maybe we'll go to the last questions before we go into our distinguished panel speakers. Do you know if your company included gender data in your corporate report? Yes, no. Ooh, lots of yes. Yes is coming up. So we have a lot of converter here. Yep. Indeed, regulators and stakeholders are increasingly looking at gender data that are regularly available and comparable to ensure that the private sector transparency and disclosure for further commitment for gender equality as a part of their contribution to sustainable development goals. As you know, SDG is not only for the government to achieve, but for all of us to share, including the private sector. And this is what we want to discuss today, about how we can support and promote private sector, public sector and business engagement to promote women economic empowerment. And we're very excited to have with us today three distinguished speakers. The first speaker is Ms. Ruenvadee Suwanmongkol. Maybe the organizer can flash the background, the other one, thank you. So allow me to quickly introduce our speaker. Ms. Ruenvadee Suwanmongkol is the Secretary General of Thailand Securities and Exchange Commission. She is a barrister with an MBA from Worcester Harris School of Business, University of California, Berkeley, United States. Given her long established career in the public sector, she has extensive experience working to build an ecosystem that support a sustainable capital market. Our second speaker is Excellency Ibu Lenny Rosalin, the Deputy Minister of for Gender Equality, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection of Indonesia. She is currently also holding a coveted position of the ASEAN Committee on Women, the chair of ASEAN Committee on Women chair. And prior to this, she has extensive career working for the Ministry of Planning, or what we know, Bappenas of Indonesia. She obtained Master of Science from the Department of Economics and Master of Finance from University of Illinois, United States. Our last but not least at all, Ma'am Aurora Garcia, or we almost always call her Ma'am Boots, has over 40 years of experiences consulting with business governments on corporate finance, and now serving as an independent director of select publicly listed companies. She's active in advocacy for corporate finance and capital market development, gender and development policy in the Philippines, or what we call the GATS codes, and women's economic empowerment and diversity and inclusion. So now let's just hear let's go into our interactive session here. The first question that I'd like to pose to our distinguished panel speakers here, as you know, with growing evidence that gender inclusive business is really better and more profitable and impactful for businesses, and to translate this into sustainable and inclusive economic developments, how can you motivate and encourage businesses, big and small, to promote gender inclusive business? Do you see a need for a national or regional policy to further these efforts? Let us hear straight from Kun Ruenvadee through the messages. How can we further motivate business on this? Let us hear. Dom, can you please share with us the messages?
Your Excellency, Mr. Giuseppe Puccini, Deputy Head of the EU Delegation to Thailand, Ibu Shinta Kamdani, CEO, Shintesa Group, and Chair of B20 Indonesia 2022, Ms. Sarah Nip, Officer in Charge, UN Women Regional Office for the Asia and the Pacific, Ms. Katia Frywat, UN Women Regional Program Manager, WeEmpowerAsia. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say thank you to UN Women for inviting me to join this session. Please accept my sincere apology for not being able to attend the event in real time with you all today. To answer the first question, on the national level, gender equality has long been on Thailand's agenda. The Thai government ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or what we know under CEDAW, in 1985, and its operational protocol in 2000. They endorsed the Beijing Platform for Action in 1995 and later became committed to UN SDG in 2015. The government then introduced the Gender Equality Act of 2015 to enact legal policies and mechanisms to advance gender equality in the country. More recently, gender equality has also been included in the 20-year national strategy, which serves as a policy framework for all agencies, including the Thai ACC, to broaden opportunity, promote equality in the society, and of course, support human rights. In relation to human rights protection, Thailand is the first country in Asia to have issued the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. The Action Plan second phase is currently in the drafting process. As a capital market regulator, the SEC emphasized the priority to ensure the development and the sustainable growth of the Thai capital market, in line with the aforementioned national direction. To create an enabling environment for gender-inclusive businesses of listed companies, the SEC supports the integration of the so-called ESG, environment, social, and governance, into business process. Gender equality, which is an element of human rights, falls under S or social category. That is to say, gender equality should be viewed through the business lens, not as an bolt-on issue, but a built-in matter that impacts corporate performance and long-term value creation. To concretize our efforts, we adopt the so-called three-pillar approach. First, we encourage self-discipline or buy-in of listed company to foster a culture that truly embraces gender equality. The board of the directors should set the right tone from the top that echo throughout the organization. The SEC introduced the Corporate Governance Code in 2017. The code outlines the recommendations on gender diversity, bringing wider, all-round perspectives into the boardroom for better board decision-making. To serve this gender diversity objective, for example, listed companies are encouraged to consider having at least 30% female directors on their board. The SEC also collaborates with the Thai Institute of Directors in creating a pipeline of potential female directors by financially supporting women to attend director training courses. This will help strengthen women's capacity and consequently enhance their career path as they build up knowledge and experience as a professional director. In addition, I would like to highlight that, owing to the effort of the UN Women team in Thailand, listed companies were introduced to the Women Empowerment Principle, or what we know under WEPS, and encouraged to adopt them to foster a gender-balanced culture within their organizations. On a similar note, the SEC has also signed an MOU with the Department of Women Affairs and Family, the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, to adopt the guidelines on gender-responsive budget within the organization. Listed companies are also encouraged to apply the guidelines for their own budget planning. The second pillar is market force. The SEC recognized the important role of institutional investors in promoting sustainability, including gender equality in the capital market. Therefore, to strengthen market force to improve such impact, SEC has issued the institutional investor code, or what we call I code, to ensure the delivery of sustainable long-term value. The third pillar is regulatory discipline. Listed companies are required to disclose their board diversity policy and director profiles in the annual legislation via 56-1 report. For the gender inclusive financial products, we introduced regulations and guidelines on social bond back in 2019. The following year, in October, the Bank of Ayutthaya issued the Women Entrepreneur Bond in the amount of up to $220 million with the aim to boost lending to women-led small and medium-sized enterprises in Thailand. It was the first private sector gender bond issuance in the Asia Pacific region. Thank you for the question. As I have mentioned earlier about the SEC approach to creating an enabling environment for supporting listed companies on gender equality, many of our efforts could not have been possible without all the helping hands we have received. Therefore, the key ingredient for the further advancing gender equality is, of course, the collaboration among all of us, not only in Thailand, but also international. On several occasions, the SEC took a leading role in bringing all the efforts across sectors. For instance, in March 2021, we hosted the first Women CEO Dialogue, raising the power and voice of women in the public and private sector, as well as international agencies. The SEC, as the capital market regulator, also participates in supporting our country to advance women economic empowerment in the international arena. We are a task force member responsible for preparing the APEC Women and the Economy Forum this year, for which Thailand is the host economy. We work closely with the Department of Women Affairs and Family, the Task Force Secretariat, to propel the gender inclusion agenda in the Thai economy. As next week, we are also invited to share how the capital market plays a role in enhancing gender equality at the Global Summit of Women. I must say, moving the gender equality agenda forward is a journey. Many of us have already embarked on the journey, but some might be looking for a compass for their direction. This is where WEB's principle could be the guidance for those who wish to start. Last year, the UN Women invited the SEC to co-host the inaugural Thailand Web Award. We were deeply delighted to see that many companies, regardless of their size and industry background, listed and non-listed, had taken the matter on board seriously, and their tireless efforts were well recognized. As I mentioned earlier, the SEC has been paying close attention to ESG reporting, as the reporting rule is already effective. Nevertheless, there are yet many other unsung heroes and, of course, heroines out there who
Thank you so much for that intervention from the SEC Commission. We wanted to hear actually from the distinguished panel speakers that we have here with us today on the first question around national policy for enabling gender inclusive businesses. And I think perhaps it would be really good for us to hear from Excellency Ibu Lenny to share her experience from Indonesia, as well as Mem Boots from the Philippines as well. Ibu Lenny, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ryce. Good afternoon, all. May I share screen, Ryce?
Yes, of course. Organizer, please allow her to be able to share the screen from her side. Yes, very good. We can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we all know that Indonesia is the world's fourth most populous country, with a population of more than 273 million people, with half of them, 49.5% actually, are women. And therefore unlocking the economic potential of women and utilizing maximum potential of women's, especially on the micro and small businesses, are critical to a strong national economic recovery. You can see from the data I put already here that 65.4 million are from MSMEs in Indonesia. This is almost 99% are on micro scales, and half of them managed and owned by women. And this contribute to our 61% of the total GDP and absorb 97% of the workforce and contribute 60% of total investment. So this is a big number, and digital transformation has become an integral aspect of initiatives to boost productivity, because 54% of our women-owned micro enterprises utilize the internet compared to 39%. And we have the problems here on the digital transformation. That's why one of the agenda of G20 is talking about digital transformation as well. Talking about the policy, actually the government of Indonesia is committed to implementing gender mainstreaming in all development sectors as mandated in our constitution since 1945, but clearly in 2000 we have issued a presidential instruction to do gender mainstreaming in all development sectors, and under the presidential direction in 2024, we have medium-term development plans, and one of our priority also how to improve our gender mainstreaming in all development fields, especially including in the private sectors, of course, especially in the economics, and in the National Long-Term Development Plan. This is in 2017. We put also gender as one of the national strategy as well. So the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, of course, promotes the comprehensive approach for gender mainstreaming, from planning, budgeting, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and audit. And the ongoing progress has aimed to improve women's quality of life and role in various fields of development, as well as to reduce gender-based violence, exploitation, and discriminations against women, and to strengthen national and regional institutions and network for gender mainstreaming and women empowerment. So one of the priority areas we do have, as mandated by our president for 2020-2024, is increasing women's empowerment in gender perspective entrepreneurship. This is the entry point where we are talking about how the roles of private sectors, as well as on the small and informal business. So next slide. This is our 5 directions from the presidents. The first one is how to empower women in economics by improving this in women empowerment, that hopefully will give the impacts to the better parenting system, reducing violence, as well as reducing child labor and preventing child marriage, because we still do have high figures on these 5 issues. In the middle of pandemic, Indonesia government is paying close attention to the existence of medium and small enterprises, including those owned and managed by women, not only to survive, but also to grow up and become even stronger. We partner with local government, private sectors, as well as NGOs to provide digital training for female entrepreneurs. Women economic resilience is also the root of many of the difficulties that women face. Women's economic vulnerability is one of the root. I think these all are similar problems, yeah, with almost all countries, yeah, with these problems. And consequently, enhancing women's potential and economic empowerment should be prioritized as part of the national and global strategy for achieving economic recovery from the pandemic and improving better future generations. Ministry of Women Empowerment has go back to this regulation. Yeah, we have already ratified our CEDAW in 1984, and also the government, based on that ratifications, we also have a, like in Thailand, we also have a plan of action on business and human rights focused on intervention by government, private sectors, and state-owned enterprises. Yeah, we divide between private sectors and state-owned enterprises, and so they become responsible business practices with respect to human rights, including women and children. Under this plan of action, we have integrated gender equality, and we also established national task force. There are about 20 ministries, yeah, become the member of the task force, and Ministry of Women and Empowerment, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, based on that plan of action on business and human rights, we are as the lead, yeah, as the lead agencies on gender equality across business sectors and interministerial. So to do that, we also develop what we call the module on gender equality for companies as well. So one of the things that ministry also work to accelerate up the implementation of those 5 presidential directives, and we do it at the village and district and provincial levels. That's because Indonesia has implemented autonomy since 2002, and this is our flagship, one of our flagship programs developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Villages, how we make all the villages in Indonesia, 74,962 villages in Indonesia, how to make all them to be women and child friendly. And we developed 10 indicators here. I think I will skip because this including how we improve the woman capacity and the data. And first one is how to organize them first, and then how to make the data at the village level, and also regulation at the village level, and how the village budgets, because under the new act on the village got the budgets from the government, and how to utilize the budget, including for accelerating the process of gender equality and women empowerment and child protection as well. And we here would like also to improve the roles, the participation, the roles, women as a leaders, at the village. So it becomes, in the village there's a kind of consultative body. It's like a parliament at the central level, but that's in the village. And also we would like to improve the entrepreneurs. The children also got a good care. There's no violence and no child labor, nobody married under age of 19. And those are, the 10 indicators. We do it in all provinces, and this has been done since 2020. Yeah. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah. In addition to financial and digital literacy, the gender aspect of financial inclusion is also critical. Yeah, equal access and asset ownership rights are crucial in ensuring women's access to financial goods such as basic savings, capital, and loans for SMEs, as well as insurance and investment. It should be noted that according to 2019 National Survey of Financial Literacy and Inclusion, women's financial inclusion or access to financial products and services is still lower than men's. Financial literacy or knowledge and abilities connected to decision-making and financial management in order to reach success exhibits the similar disparity. In June, last 2 years, the Indonesian government announced the National Strategy for Women's Financial Inclusion. The Asian Development Bank recognized this strategy as the first and the only one of its kind in the world. The strategy itself aims to fill the gap by introducing key priority areas and action plans to promote access to finance by Indonesian women, accommodating to their diverse needs, interests, and backgrounds. There is also strive for more involvement of our office and women's groups and entrepreneurship networks to provide a more comprehensive analysis of the current challenges faced by women in accessing and benefiting from financial products and services. So our ministry also has been implementing training on leadership, for women. And I think we work together also with the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises and also with the international agencies on how to improve the leadership of women, especially who are working not only in the private sectors, but also in the public sectors. And also we train NGOs on this leadership, especially for them who are working together at the rural women as our partners. So this becomes our effort to encourage gender mainstreaming in villages, and this is particularly important in terms of women's role in decision making and the acceleration of development, starting from the rural areas and goes up to the district and cities. We have 514 districts and cities, and goes up again at the province. We do have 34 provinces, and then we can get the sum up at the national level. So several good instances indicated that women may speak their opinions in their roles. So if they come from the private sectors, they can speak, but if they come from the rural, they can also speak, and even from the public sectors, they can also speak. So training on leadership is very critical. And the other one is the, I think this goes to our second, and the next question, Ryce, I think.
Yes,
I will stop.
Yes.
No,
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Ibu Lenny. I think that
thank you.
shows a complication and more challenges at the grassroots level and the policy implementation in the context of Indonesia. So it's quite interesting to hear both the government policy and how the bottom-up approach in engaging with the communities and village and implementing financial inclusion strategy. Let us turn to hear from Boots, and this is probably going to be a very different perspective from the private sector. And Boots, please, can you share with us your view on national policy, regional policy to support private sector engagement?
Thank you, Ryce, and thank you too to my co-panelists. Let me briefly share my insights on this question. In general, laws and policies which create a gender-neutral environment are key to further women's equality. And there are many entry points for government to provide such environment through legislation, through fiscal measures, promoting change in public-private partnerships. So public money can be a powerful force for governments seeking to reduce gender equality, such as in the Philippines, for example. We have the Magna Carta on Women, which is probably one of the few in the world, though I did hear earlier our friend from Thailand speak of the Gender Equality Act, which has been promulgated. Ours was actually passed even earlier, which requires that a minimum of 5% of the national government budget should be allocated for gender and development. Okay. How else could government encourage businesses to be gender inclusive? By walking the talk and being a role model itself, practicing gender inclusive policies. For example, in appointments of women in leadership positions, say the cabinet, gender inclusive recruitment, and even gender-based procurement, and gender-sensitive practices within the bureaucracy. So just recently, the Philippine government, through our Civil Service Commission, issued a regulation allowing the public sector or government offices to adopt flexible and hybrid work arrangements while ensuring the delivery of public service. Governments should be inclusive through public-private partnerships, and government itself should be the lead convener, calling for multi-sector stakeholder inputs. Governments alone cannot solve the challenges of gender inequality, and the private sector plays a significant role in maximizing opportunities for women. Media has a role in creating awareness and education. Civil society can contribute in promoting the advocacy. I would also like to mention that government can further encourage businesses positively through incentives and rewards, or negatively, which should result to positive responses, by penalizing them for non-compliance and non-performance. For example, also just recently during International Women's Month, our Securities and Exchange Commission, actually in response to our initiative also to increase women's participation in boards, recognized 3 publicly listed companies with the most number of women in their boards. I think almost 50% of their boards were women. When in the case of many others, PLCs, there were no women at all, and if at all, only 1 or 2. Another example is the ASEAN Corporate Governance Scorecards. Companies are given bonus points ranging from 1 to 3, depending on the number of female independent directors in their boards. On the other hand, in countries where regulations like quotas have been set, as in Malaysia, I believe, where 30% of women, board members should be women, companies may be required to explain why they are not compliant, and possibly penalties and sanctions could be imposed, as described earlier by our friend from Thailand. On the question of whether you need a national or regional policy to further this, yes, having a national or regional policy has its advantages, as it facilitates an integrated approach in achieving gender inclusivity. I would even suggest the term gender mainstreaming is, in fact, what it means. Is an appropriate approach where the gender perspective is applied in the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies, regulations, and programs. Having an integrated approach ensures that policies are relevant and responsive to the needs of stakeholders, and that government interventions are effective. The ultimate benefits will be better policy making, better functioning institutions, and more effective processes. I would add, though, that policies are only good as these are implemented. The challenge is to ensure that these are implemented. Implementation is monitored, and policies are updated as the changing environment would require. That's my brief response to your questions, Chai.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Boots. I think that was very helpful and very succinct. I am very guilty in this session as a bad moderator who's badly managed the time today. So we are actually a little bit behind the time. I apologize to the distinguished speakers and all the participants for my badly managed time management. Blame it all on me. So let me quickly run through my last questions, but I think for this one, if I may, ask the distinguished speaker, Ibu Lenny and Ma'am Boots, to actually give us maybe just one quick final example that you would like to highlight on private sector and public sector collaboration to advance women economic empowerment from your distinguished experience. That would be very helpful. Could I hear from Ibu Lenny? Perhaps just highlight in a few minutes, probably.
Sure. I will continue my slide, because that it's already in this slide. Actually, we have public-private partnership is currently focused on infrastructure, yeah, creating awareness of the benefits of this PPP for gender equality and women's economic empowerment. This is here we incorporate gender mainstreaming mechanism. Yeah, this is done by doing consultations, capacity building, supporting women into employment, income generating activities, allocation of funding to support gender integration, and of course, monitoring and evaluation and gender sensitive policy making. This also including the implementation of cooperation and partnership, of course, because we talk about public partners, private partnership. And at the same time, also we introduce women empowerment and child protection programs to them, and communication, the area of work, agreeing on the rules and approaches. So based on this, gender mainstreaming mechanism has been incorporated into project process to strengthen gender in a public-private partnership. So our ministry has developed a mechanism on this related to the partnership with the public and private sectors by introducing women's empowerment and child protection programs to the private sectors, then communicating the needs for partnership, and also we agreeing on the rules and approaches used, encouraging cooperation and implementing partnership activities, including monitoring and reporting. Our ministry has carried out a partnership program with the private sector through Memorandum of Understandings and Cooperation Agreements to support women's empowerment and child protection, including we have here the state-owned enterprises, we call PT PNM Persero, and also with the telecommunication companies, and also with other private companies and so on. And this collaboration mainly aimed for increasing women's economic empowerment and resilience. So as the G20 host country, Indonesia has chosen the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger. We have reached a point when we must ensure that women are fully included in global economic recovery plans and actions. And we have gathered here assuring that diversity is an essential part of our inclusive growth. So we need to work closely, hand in hand, creating a bright, prosperous, and abundant future for all of us. Yeah. So it's very critical here, Ryce, collaboration, cooperation, because gender mainstreaming cannot be done only by the government, and also cannot only be done by private sectors, but all of us have to work together. I will stop here. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ibu Lenny. That was very good conclusion. Could I perhaps ask members to come in and share some experience as a final remarks?
If you will allow me to cite 2 examples briefly of private sector initiative. Locally, and from the Philippine experience, we have embarked on an initiative in partnership with the Securities and Exchange Commission of the Philippines, with the goal of enhancing the gender aspect of the sustainability reporting guidelines for registered companies. Our goal being to make reporting of gender disaggregated workforce data relevant and value-adding for companies, because unless, as previously mentioned, what gets measured, gets done. So it's important to informing policies by accurately presenting issues and crafting responsive solutions. So advocating for uniform gender reporting is not only about equality for equality's sake, but really about maximizing shareholder value and seeking shared value for strategy alignment and further increasing a company's credibility and bolstering its reputation. To supplement that work, we also analyzed the gender disclosure of the top 30 Philippine publicly listed companies. And in summary, the study highlighted the significance of gender equality disclosures in the narrative and the conduct of sustainability reports in Asia, as very few studies have actually been conducted on the dynamics of sustainability and its links to business success. So the landscape in the Philippines on sustainability reporting is improving through government guidelines. There are still areas for improvement. On the regional front, I'd also like to also share our work as Phil went and on behalf of the ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network in crafting the policy briefing paper called ASEAN Through a Gender Lens, which suggests recommendations for the full implementation of the action agenda on mainstreaming women's economic empowerment, which was committed to by the leaders during the ASEAN meeting in 2017, which happened to have taken place in the Philippines. And this paper actually was a product of an extensive study on the framework in ASEAN and how it empowers women, and ensuring that regional macroeconomic policies are gender responsive and inclusive. And it suggests several areas for implementation. One is for member states to adopt concrete and measurable actions to address the barriers which impede the maximization of women's full potential. To use information and communication technologies to fill the lack of power of women and to allow them to have equal participation in the ASEAN economy through use of technology. A recommendation to invest in women-owned and women-led enterprises by providing adequate capital and network, which was discussed earlier, for increased access to the regional marketplace. To aid women rise up the ranks of leadership positions to make independent choices so that ASEAN should address the gender leave and pay gap. And of course, importantly, we need to have representation in decision-making bodies. Who else can better talk about women if not women? So this has to be closely viewed and considered because in many instances, the ASEAN bodies are not given sufficient, I would think, sufficient representation for female in business, whether in the workforce or in as entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Boots, and very much appreciate the intervention from Ibu Lenny as well. If we are inadequate in this session because of the time, my deep apologies and organizers in not actually managing the time so well. But we're very glad to hear from your experience, and despite the fact that there are many challenges ahead, we are also glad that we also have some building blocks through your work and the continuation of the efforts of everyone here. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this session, and we look forward to seeing you back into the main session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryce. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.